What's happening, everybody? Lynn Pierre here, Homeschool Aficionado Podcast. Today, I have Mr. Dion Baker with us. Great conversation. This is really good for you homeschool dads out there. Y'all dads that need a little jump start of someone that is disciplined and actually gets results from his discipline. I think it's really cool about how he talks about how he is really good at what he does in his craft, yet and still his family comes first. His family can still disrupt him or disturb him because he reminds them that they are the priority. So that's really big. Another big thing is he is focused on the win. So as you're listening to this podcast or watching it, however you're doing it, I want you to think about, what does it mean to you to win? Like as a husband or a mother or even a homeschool student, what does it mean to win? And detail that on paper, because this gentleman, he talks about how he wants to win. And by him winning, he set the example for his family to win. So he wants to win. He wants his family to win. We all want to win. So enjoy yourself. Just sit back and relax and listen to Dion Baker on today's podcast.
Dion, Mr. Baker, what's going on, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing well. How's it going, Lynn?
I'm doing great. So introduce yourself to us. Tell us where you are right now. What are you doing right now? Do you have a family, your job, all that stuff? Just give us a quick little introduction of why you're here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, yes, I do. Right now, I'm an operational excellence consultant. I'm in the banking and finance industry. I am a father of two. I've got a daughter and I got a son. My daughter's 11. My son is 13 and married as well. Been married for about 15 and a half years as well.
You got to say that.
Oh, yeah. I got to say.
In this day and age, you don't know. So you got to say that. Yes.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. You're right about that. So, yep. Yeah. So right now I live in the Charlotte area, we're in the Charlotte metro area. And I've been here for about 13 years so far. Originally from New Jersey, so originally from the Northeast. So I've been down here for a little while. I guess that's long enough for people to say you're a official Charlottean, as they say. But nevertheless,
That's right.
still got a Jersey in me. So hey, can't take the jungle out the cat, right? So I'm still here.
Okay, but let me ask you this real quick. Now, why did you move down here from Jersey? Is it just for job employment or what?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, at the time I was doing my own business, functioning as a business consultant for graphic design and marketing. So I didn't have to be in New Jersey. I really didn't have to be anywhere. I was working remotely, doing what I was doing. So my brother-in-law and his wife actually moved down here before us, and they were talking about Charlotte being a good place for us to come to, knowing that we were kind of interested in venturing out. We decided to take the plunge into Charlotte. One of the big drivers for me amongst the other options was that I really had never been to Charlotte before. So it was the most, or the least charted water, should I say, of the options I had. So I figured I'd rather go to a place that I had no familiarity with and kind of get the novel experience, and then see where it goes. Honestly, I didn't have any really long-term vision of staying down here. It was just kind of like, let's go down there, see what happens in a way, see how it goes, especially business wise and everything. And well, here I am 13 years later. So
And so you didn't know anybody here except for your brother-in-law.
that's correct.
Cool.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I'm
so you just jumped out there.
just
Now,
jumped out
did you
here.
already have kids when you moved down here? No, you didn't.
I did. I
You didn't.
actually, I had my son. Just
You
had my
had
son.
one.
Yeah,
Okay.
just had my son. Yeah. So at the time he was only, I don't know, 5 or 6 months old or something like that.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't know what was going on. He was just hanging out with y'all.
Now I could say, put him in the car seat, take him on a ride. He's good. You know what I mean?
Okay. So tell me about homeschooling. You and your wife homeschool. So what made y'all decide to homeschool?
Yeah, that's a good question too. So really homeschooling is something we had in mind from the beginning. That is, when we first had our son and kind of going into that, we were interested in
Okay.
homeschooling. Yeah, so we started off that way and then we transitioned out, then we went back. So I'll run through that story real quick. you know, yeah. And let's talk motivations first. So one of the primary motivations was really, I'll say, I guess I can sum it up as curriculum control. I'll put it that way. But given the objective of schooling is to learn, right? It's kind of an outcomes based thing to me, right? You want to be able to, have knowledge in whatever those things are, or whatever subjects, reading, writing, arithmetic, what have you. But you don't have to do it through the traditional system, right? Because if you can manage those things, especially nowadays with the resources we have available,
Right.
you don't have to tap, the brick and mortar.
Hmm.
We can actually tap these different resources, and by creating a strategic curriculum or tapping curriculums that already exist, we can get the learning accomplished, for the student, in this case, our children, without having to do it the, should I say, traditional way, the brick and mortar
Yeah.
school. So we had an interest in doing that from the beginning. I think for me, one of the things I had in mind is the fact that you can kind of go at whatever pace you need to go to, and kind of have a customized learning solution for your child too, right? So like it's not some one size glove fits all approach, right? You can get specific courses or learning tracks, or maybe you want to have a kind of more of a language or certain cultural focus, or maybe even if you want to travel around a bit, right? Without being confined to the brick and mortar. So it allows for a lot more flexibility, curriculum wise and proximity wise.
Well, let's ask you this though. You're in New Jersey, y'all don't have kids yet, and you already made a decision that you want to homeschool. So, like, did you have people in New Jersey around you that were homeschooling? Did you see someone on TV? How did you even find out that homeschooling exists? Because I didn't really know. I didn't know about homeschooling when I was hanging out in Florida. So, where was the introduction to homeschooling?
That's a good question too. For me, one, I didn't have anybody around me homeschooling while I didn't come up see people homeschooling. That was like, I'm not sure what I would have thought about that when I was younger. I'd be like,
Right.
But one of the things, I think one of the works is an author named John Taylor Gatto, Gatto. So he was a former educator in New York, the state of New York. I think might have been in New York City. I don't know, but definitely in the state of New York. And I read a lot of his works. I think through his works, I got exposed to the idea of homeschooling as an option. You know,
Wow.
yeah. So
Okay.
had written several books. One of them, I think, is the underground history of the educational system, which is a thick book. It's probably 500 pages, and on 8.5 by 11. It's a pretty thick book, and a very comprehensive study of it. And it really talks about the history of schooling, and how why the system is how it is, as far as
Yeah.
curriculum wise and things like that. And that was just one of the things that opened my eyes to the fact that there are options out there, right? And
Mhm.
I've been through the brick and mortar school. I had a good experience. And I don't quote unquote knock it, but me and us in this time, this is a different era,
Yeah.
and the options are there to have more flexibility. And for me, I mean, you don't have to be confined to the traditional approaches, when you have so many different outlets, and homeschooling now, coming down to New Jersey too, where it wasn't, down here, we were able to tap more of a community. I think, when we really got
Yes.
down here. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, what about when you and your wife had those first few conversations? Was she on board from jump, or was it like you had to convince her a little bit, or how did that go?
Yeah, I don't remember there being a lot of like debate about it in a way. I think it was something that we both were kind of on board with as an option, for something to do, because we also had in mind from a domestic structure for her to be a stay-at-home mom, and for me
Hmm.
to go and be the primary breadwinner, right? So with that strategy from the get-go, that kind of set up the infrastructure to kind of enable a homeschooling environment more than not, and not to say that if you are what we call a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home parent, whatever it may be, that means you have a homeschool. But if you have that structure, right? I mean, it's reasonable, right? Because if nobody's at home, well, who's gonna school? So yeah, having that structure from the get go and a plan to set it up that way, I think help also enable that conversation and enable the affirmative answer to that conversation to be a little bit more acceptable too.
Okay. So now, as a homeschool dad, tell me the structure of your day. I know your wife has a different structure because she's home with the kids. But as far as being a homeschool dad, a second ago, we just talked about you going to the gym. So, of course, you taking care of yourself is a priority, and it should be a priority for all of us. And of course, that sets an example for your wife and your kids and the people you work with, everyone. But take us through, like as a homeschool dad, take us through your schedule before school, you going to work, and then what happens when you get home? What does it look like? A picture of your life?
Yeah, yeah. I'll give it kind of like a broad schematic here. So you mentioned, just coming from the gym this morning. So the morning time is where I look to get that done, right?
Yeah.
And why is that? You hit the nail on the head. Without this body, without my health, I can't do much for them or anybody. So I look to take care of that first and foremost. And for me, that's a big win. I kind of, as there's author David Goggins, as he would say, I put a win in I put a win in the cookie jar.
Yes.
you know,
I know,
uh,
David. Yeah.
okay, yep. So yep, I'll put a win in the cookie jar quick. So I get that going in the morning. I'm up, before sunrise, and I get it done. By the time that sun's just peeking over the horizon. So, that gives me a win early. I feel refreshed. I've got a big win in the bucket for something that's a priority in my life, my well-being, psychologically, physically. And now I'm ready to go. So after that, I go ahead
That's
and
good.
take on a breakfast. Go to my second breakfast, as I call it. This little smoothie right here. I like drinking my smoothie every morning. So I do that religiously as well. And then after that, time to go to work. So usually, between those, I call it the 9 to 5 hours to kind of use that space. I'm kind of locked into my work. Now
Are the kids up? Are the kids up before you leave for work?
okay, yeah. So the kids are
You do
up.
see them. Okay.
Yeah, I do. So I do get to see them off. Usually I'm kind of like waking them up in the process, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do get to see them off before I go. That is when I go. So I have a hybrid work schedule. So a few days I go to the office, a couple of days I'm working on. Right.
Okay.
So nevertheless, yeah, I get to see them before I kind of hop in and lock in there. And then, my availability varies depending, if I'm in the office or here at home.
At home, yeah.
And so from here at home, I see them throughout the day. When I'm not on calls, I poke my head out and talk to them and things like that, see how things are going. If I am on calls, it kind of is what it is. But they kind of know the deal there. So, but yeah, once I get through with that, I've got my, my 5 to 8 time, if you want to call it. It was like, family dinner time, checking in with everybody, spending time with my kids. Usually by that time, from a homeschooling perspective, they're wrapped up by that point. Usually, depending,
Right.
they got some tutors that might come and things like that. But usually wrapped up. But usually between 5 and 8 period, it's my time set aside with them. And then from 8 to about 9:30 ish is my time to kind of wrap things up there, dinner wise, get the kitchen straight, and also do some creative work of my own. So I do writing about my profession, and create content that I share online about my profession as well. So that's my time to kind of get that in right before I go to bed. You're talking about 9:30, 10 o'clock. I'm sideways. I'm working on the next day.
Well, go back to the beginning. What time's your wake up time around about 5 or so? Because you're up before the sun, so
Oh yeah. My alarm goes off at 4:30.
4:30,
Yeah.
and then you're laying down to go to bed like around 10. That's it, and that's pretty much like clockwork. You pretty much do that throughout the week.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I do it like clockwork, and even on weekends, I look to keep it that way because if I don't, then it's going to throw me off coming into my week. So even on a Saturday and the Sunday, I still keep the same alarm time for wake up.
Mhm.
And for me, most importantly, like I was actually telling my son the other day, I look to keep the same go to bed time because the same go to bed time enables my wake up time, right? So
Mhm.
a lot of times, we talk about what time to get up, but like you were asking what time you go to bed, that allows you to do
Get
that.
up.
Like, there's no way for me I can go to bed at midnight and expect to be doing a 4:30 wake up, hitting the gym. Nah, that's not going to have the juice. It's not sustainable, right? So I look to have a sustainable practice, and the biggest thing is the discipline the prior day to enable your next day. And I think that's often overlooked.
That's good.
Yeah,
So the disciplines that you place in that you have in place, they start the day before. You don't wake up and then start planning your day. Your day is already planned the day before.
100%, 100%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good. And so when you're home and working, this has been a touchy subject for a lot of guys that work at home. Like, how accessible are you to the kids and to your wife, or that they sort of know if they hear dad talking during certain times, they just don't disturb you, or they can disturb you anytime, but if you're on the phone, then they know to sneak out. How do you structure your separation time, even when you're in the house?
That's a good question too. One of the things I do is I let them know. So like I might be
Communication.
there's right communication exactly. So like for example, if I'm going to be on a call, I'll shout to them or tell them, hey, I'm about to be on a call for the next 2 hours, 2.5 hours, 1 hour, 30 minutes, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But I let them know that I close my door, right, so I don't get any background noise, disturbance, and stuff like that. But I also let them know if you need me, come get me. So this way I'm here. They can respect the fact he's got the door closed. He's taking care of business. So if we do need to come to him, we need to kind of have this validation process with ourselves. In a sense, like, don't come to me saying y'all arguing about, peanut butter and jelly, right? I'm on a call right now. You know what I mean? Like, nobody wants to hear that. But if you got an issue, I want to let you know that I'm here, and come get me 100%, because that trumps whatever I'm doing. And I need to let you, understand that, because I'll cut the call. If I got to cut the call, I'll cut the call. But yeah, I let them know. I just let them know up front, and they say, okay, and they're good to go.
Now that what's so good about that is a lot of times when I talk to people, not just men, but people that work from home, they're like the family's cut off. Yes, I'm in the house, but they're cut off. They know not to disturb me, don't come in, whatever. But I love the fact that you said that whatever's going on with your family trumps whatever's happening on that phone call. Because it's like you communicate with your wife and with your kids from jump. Hey, you all are my priority. I'm working. I'm on a phone call. This is very important, but it's not more important than you are. And I think what's so great about that teaching is it's like you are in the position of Christ in your house, because when your kids look up to you, they're seeing you as a loving father. So now they're seeing you as a loving father that they have access to whenever they want to have access to. They can't just come in any old kind of way, but they have access to it whenever, and they know that, hey, regardless of what dad's doing, I'm still more important than him working or whatever he's doing. So I
100%.
think that I think that is excellent.
Yeah,
That is priceless for a kid to actually live that. Not just you talking about it, but you actually living it. That's priceless.
yeah. Certainly appreciate you recognizing that. Yeah, because it's you want to be an example of, for me, like structure, order, right? Because without order, there's chaos, right? But you have to have discipline in order to create order out of chaos. And one of those things is prioritization, right? So you got to have boundaries with things. If my job, for example, was a top priority thing in my life, right? Then really everything and everybody in it starts to dominate everything else in my life as well, right? And that's not the way I function. For me, like, that needs to serve something, right? It needs to be in a hierarchy, and I know it serves a purpose. I enjoy what I do. It's what I'll continue to do. But at the same time, the conditions of what I do can't interfere with the sustainability of the other parts of my life that are valuable as well. And if it does, that's where prioritization comes into play. And then, you know what? If for some reason that got out of hand in some way that's outside of my locus of control, well, then I need to make a change, right? So, and kind of like, right, I look to keep the main things there and focus and get the things done that matter, that will allow me at the end of my time on this earth to be, I guess maybe not for me, but for those who see me or in general, to say, I had order to it, and I feel that, I accomplished what I need to do by prioritizing the things I need to prioritize.
And another thing I like about everything you're saying is that you're demonstrating to your kids how to get what you want out of life by doing things that might be uncomfortable. You might not always want to wake up at 4:30 or go to sleep at 10, but you're doing it, and you're doing it even when you don't want to do it, because you have certain priorities and everything in place. And I believe that we produce what we are. So because your kids are seeing a disciplined father, it's going to be easier for them to be disciplined as they grow up and get older, because they had a good example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
And I read this book about a month ago. It was a Secret Service agent, and she was talking about when she first started working out or something like that. But one of the things she said was that her and her husband went on a hike. In her mind, because she's a Secret Service agent type of person. In her mind was, if my husband passed out right now, would I be able to pick him up and take him back to safety? And she was like, no, I probably couldn't, because he's bigger than me. I'm not in shape. So that drove her to take care of her body on a whole nother level. So I feel like with you, the way you take care of your body is ministry, not only to your kids, but to your wife, and like to everyone that sees you. Because honestly, because the way you take care of your body, if something were to go down with your kids and you need to run from your house into the street, pick up your child, bring your child back to the house or whatever, you wouldn't have to think about that. You wouldn't be huffing and puffing, because you've already conditioned your body before the actual incident activity or whatever. Just the fact that, and I know I keep on talking about this, but the fact that you prioritize your health and your body, and that's all you have. You're not getting another body. That's it. That's it. I just think there's something special about a person, and especially the leader of his home, that's prioritizing those certain things. I walked into a room the other day with a guy, And he was an older guy, and he was a resident, and he said, "You look like you take care of your body." I said, "Yeah, I exercise and everything." And he said, "Well, make sure you keep on doing that because I didn't, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here." And not everyone that's in the hospital or in a nursing home is because they didn't take care of their body. Because things happen to certain people. But are we doing everything that we can do? And when I listen to your schedule and listen to what you're doing everything that you can do on your end, and then allowing God in the life to take care of the rest. So I truly, truly congratulate you for that.
Oh, I
Now,
appreciate that.
I want to transition a little bit. I want to go all the way back to like little Dion. Like when you were in high school, after high school, did you immediately go into college? Did you immediately get a job? Tell me about that. What happened right after high school?
Yeah, yeah. So during high school, I was actually a scholar athlete. So I was a basketball recruit, and also academically, I did pretty well as well. So fortunately, I came out of college and I had many options. Oh, sorry, I came out of high school and had many options from a collegiate perspective. And so I went straight to college, right out of high school. So I went to a college called Trinity College. It's a liberal arts college in Hartford, Connecticut. So that's where I attended.
Connecticut. Okay.
Yep, yep. So I was in Connecticut there. I went north from Jersey into a little bit more cold, So went up there and actually went to college as well. I have a twin brother also. So we were both recruited together, basketball wise, sports wise, both did well academically. And we both actually went to the same college too. So interesting
Okay.
piece.
Well, let's stop right there for a second.
Yeah.
So you did well academically and you did well in sports. Why is that? Is it because your parents, were you just a gifted athlete? Did you really love studying? Like what made you so good at athletics and and with your education with schoolwork in high school? I
Yeah.
mean, were you just that focused? You were born into a disciplined family? What?
For me, I have to give credit to context too, familial context, because I did come into a space, right, that where learning and education was given a priority. But I think for me as well, I took it on. I really felt that knowledge was important. So like sometimes with kids and oh school sucks and you know what I mean school and I don't like
Yeah.
school. Like me, I was never really that wasn't my interest. So like you know, I would learn about history, while people are debating on whether or not they should learn about history. I didn't go through
Mhm.
that block. I went straight to the learning because I found it
Wow.
valuable, right? And I find ways to use the opportunity of school to enhance my fundamental skills. It's kind of like I tell my kids all the time. It's like there are fundamental skills that you get from school, right? And it's
Mhm.
it's less about the algebra, although that's important. It's less about the history, although that's important. It's less about the English, although that's important. It's the aspect and the discipline to establish to be a solid student,
Mhm.
to create rigor in your day, right? To have focus in your approach. To
To create rigor in your day.
yeah,
That's
absolutely,
good.
absolutely. Have focus in your approach. Go amongst the other students who don't like something and still like it, and also don't have a problem being vocal about it, but know how to stick to your business amongst a space where the gravity might be trying to pull you elsewhere. Right. And these are the types of like resilience and character things that come out of it. So I say that to say, like, me as a student, I think somehow or another I locked into that. And I wasn't afraid to be different from everybody else insofar as I didn't need people's acceptance. I felt like my acceptance was really what my objectives were. Right? Did I accept my purpose? And as long as I marched toward that, I was comfortable. So just to give one further thing, like especially coming into high school, I realized that I remember my mom telling me, like high school is where you need to especially get right because that's going to allow you to set a context for you for college. College is going to look at your high school work.
Yeah.
So I came into high school, and I was always a good student before that, but especially when I got into high school, I knew now that this had an end to it that could open doors at the end of it. It wasn't like high school's over with and I can't see anything else. For me, it was okay. High school, I remember telling to myself too, like freshman year before freshman year in high school. I said, by the time I come out of high school, I'm looking to have two keys. One, academic key, and two, an athletic key. And neither one or both of them are going to allow me to get to the next stage I want to get to.
You said that before your freshman year in high school. Okay,
Yeah.
but where does that come from? Your mom and dad talking to you? I mean, what? Because now we didn't have all these YouTube people and everything back then. So where did that come from for you to have that type of mindset going into high school?
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely wasn't from the YouTube, right? That way after what I'm talking about. But you know what? I think it was like, just coming up in a space when I'm thinking back here, because I came up always looking to learn. I remember even being in church. My grandparents were ministers. They had their own church out in Philadelphia. And
Yeah.
and I always remember reading the Bible during the sermons, and I would always look to learn more about what they were saying, right? So if
Yeah.
they had a verse from, Isaiah, whatever, I go read the whole chapter. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Or I delve into whatever I was interested into. So coupled with that, coupled with the space of, honestly, thinking back, coming up in that era, there was a big push. I'll say that there was a group, that known as the Nation of Gods and Earth, so they were called 5%, and that was a big thing in that New York area. But there were lessons about teaching knowledge and having that as a focus. And I adopted that part, and I adopted literally. So like, it wasn't about, being a member of anything for me. It was like I adopted, that just from the space to where, you know what, knowledge is something I should value. Being focused is something of value. Being disciplined is something of value. And I think I just latched on to those character aspects. Geez, I can name several influences that come to mind. Just as a kid, I would pull it from anywhere. I remember watching Dragon Ball Z. It was a cartoon.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and the discipline of the character to train. I would pull that as lessons for me to do.
Really? Wow.
Absolutely. And last but not least, I mentioned my twin brother earlier, and he was of like mind in that regard too. So it was an iron sharpens iron a scenario as well.
Yeah.
So if it's
So
somebody
it's a partnership between you all. So both of you all kept each other sharp.
100%. Yeah, 100%. We kept each other
Wow.
sharp, because like me and him, like when it came to like academic focus and like even playing basketball in my neighborhood, like we really locked on to that hardest. Like we'd be at the court by ourselves, right? For a lot of time. And I would come home and hit the books. And like, I would be the one, honestly, I'd be the one on the bus coming home from school. We'd be the one on the bus coming home from school telling people to eat healthy, or drink more water, eat more fiber. You know what I mean? We're just abnormal kids. Yeah, and and we just value those things, and contextually, I think I saw things around me as well that were opposite from that in some ways,
Mm,
and I realized that what, I don't want the outcome, so I need to do something different, right? I got to put a different input if I want a different output here. So
priceless.
yeah,
Absolutely priceless. Yeah. And to get that at a young age, I mean, you can't beat that.
oh yeah, oh yeah,
Because now you've been thinking like that for a long time. It's not something that just dropped in your spirit at 20. You've been doing this since you were a kid. That's priceless.
oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. So it's carried a long way, and and through that, there's a certain level of resolve you establish within yourself, right? To have Carol Dweck, the author of a book called Grit, but it's a comic word known as
Yeah.
grit.
Uh-huh.
You kind of establish that grit, that resilience, to know that you can start from uh, a place of not knowing, and be able to learn anything.
Uh-huh.
And not only be able to learn, but there are things that you can take control of, and it's really a matter of what can I control, what can I influence to get the outcomes I want, and focusing purely on that. Because if you do, you realize, we realize we have a lot more control, than we otherwise
Then we think we do.
than we do. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned earlier about getting up at 4:30. Do I quote unquote want to get up at 4:30? Nah, two ways to think about it. First, kind of no, right? Because like as early, I got the little voice in my head, as they call it. But it gets to a point where you know what, you do want to do it because you realize what you're going to get out of it. Um,
Yes.
not to keep running on about that voice really quick. While I was telling my kids about it because I was on the treadmill. The first thing I do is come to the gym, run that treadmill up, and I start running. I was telling my kids how the other day, and by the way, point preface, I say this to them so they can understand these principles we're talking about, like me, like dealing with it. Uh,
Yes.
so I'm like, hey, I'm about to run on the treadmill, and this voice telling me, you know what? Don't do any of that. Just sit back today and take it easy. Don't run at all. And they're like, I even entertained it for a second, right? I sat down. Then I said, you know what? No, get on the treadmill, run it up, and then it's like, okay, why don't you stop at 0.2 miles? Like, just stop and walk. Just call it a day. It's hard enough. It's early, right? And you get kind of hot too, by the way. And I'm like, no, just keep going, and eventually it dies off. And my point is that, like, and I bring them the story to kind of go with this, piece, telling my kids and trying to be an example of You're gonna face resilience. I do. It's gonna but a lot of it's in you. It's not.
Yes.
It's not everything else. A lot of the time, it's the voice that you're telling yourself. That you're not this, you're not that. Supposed to limit you. That's supposed to restrain you. Oh, how about we test those boundaries? Keep running anyway, and see if that's real.
Uh,
If that's really a restraint. And most times, we'll find out. You know what? The thing that's really holding us back is us.
wow.
Yeah,
That's a mic drop right there. And I say that because not just young people, but grown people too. We always talk about things that are outside of ourselves. We got to go here. We got to do this. We don't feel this. We don't feel that. And we really don't get down to what you're talking about. What's that voice inside our head that we're negotiating with? Honestly, that's talking us out of something that we know that we could actually do, but we don't.
absolutely.
Well, what thing is so cool about what you just said was, especially talking to your kids, is you've been in this game for a long time and you're still hearing the voices. So it makes sense to know that, hey, you're gonna get challenged for the rest of your life. So it's not that you're trying to do so much that the voice never comes. You just know how to respond, knowing the voice is gonna come. And so what's cool about that is like young people, when they get resistance, you're teaching them that, hey, you're gonna get resistance even when you're grown. But that doesn't mean that it's the truth and doesn't mean that you have to succumb to it. You just do whatever you have decided to do.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Earlier you brought up Christ and being in Christ like, right? You remember, of course, the story of Jesus in the desert when they're there and Satan trying to tempt him, right? To basically telling him to throw himself off of the mountain. But as he said, down Satan, right? But
Yeah.
put him in his place. And that's kind of like that lesson, right? To
Mhm.
enable that same type of principle. And yeah, when you hear those voices, it's like, you got to tap into that, that Christ like, that high energy, that's going to allow you to maximize your potential while you're here. Not the thing that are going to be, the gravity pulling you down, away from where you can actually ascend to. And yeah, there's a lot we have control of if we just are willing to challenge it, what we consider our norm, dare I say.
Well, we can no, get
Yeah.
close to the edge.
Yep.
It was a story about, we see all these interviews about Michael Jordan and stuff and what he was doing. And we hear the quote that said pretty often, it says something to the effect of, oh, we are our own worst enemy. We are our own worst enemy. We're the ones holding ourselves back. And when these interview guys used to interview Michael Jordan and stuff, he would talk about how I'm not competing with that guy over there. I'm competing with myself. Like, can I be better than I was yesterday? And it's like he was taking all the emphasis off of what someone else could do and was thinking about, hey, what can I do? How can I get better? And that's the exact same thing that you're talking about. Take our eyes and our mouths off of external circumstances and what can we do? And the more we put our energy on what we can do, it sounds like you're saying we're going to see if we can do more.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because the boundaries of our locus of control, starts to expand or, that territory starts to grow. You realize how much we truly can influence, if we actually think about it and approach it strategically and really go after it, do the things you're uncomfortable with, particularly
Do
not
the uncomfortable things. Yeah.
and not just for the sake of doing, but doing it with an end in mind, you know, um, and that's going to help pull us forward.
Wow. Okay. So, what are your thoughts about getting young people to that point? I mean, I feel like God's put something in you, like at a young age, that you sort of just gravitated in that direction. But what about the young people that they're in high school now and they don't have an example or a twin brother or anything like that? Their atmosphere is not set up to be a disciplined atmosphere. Like, what could you say to that young person that would like to be there because they know about the benefits? But I mean, their atmosphere and their mind is just not set up to do that. What type of steps can they take in order to live a more disciplined life?
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing, context is going to be a big challenge, right? If you don't have the pieces around you. But I will say the most important part is what you said. If it's in them, to realize, what, I do need to be, more disciplined in this way. I do want to achieve that. I don't see any examples around me, but this is what I want. I think
Mhm.
that's the biggest part. And I think
Awareness, yeah.
awareness, yep, self-awareness. If you know where you want to go at that point, kind of taking your focus off of, I say take your focus off of, but take it on. Take your focus off of the things around you that are not aligned with that. But also, what I mean by take it on is if you start to see your life through the lens of what you truly want, you might realize that things around you, things you can gather from them that are actually what you really want. So
Okay.
instead of looking at this person or that person like, you know what, they're not really where I want to be. Well, maybe they're not, but maybe something about them not being where you want to be is actually something that can help you be where you want to be.
That's good. Yeah.
And I think also today in the information age, as we call it, I think that the opportunity is greater than ever when it comes to that.
No, but
Yeah,
there's no excuse.
there's
Yeah.
no excuse. So that you mentioned earlier, we didn't have we didn't have the YouTube and all that kind of stuff and the stuff to tap into. But somebody nowadays they can go straight to the phone. They can find people and create a space virtually around them that does represent people that they
That's
admire.
big
Yeah,
right
yeah.
there. Yeah. So the excuse is I don't have anybody around me that can help me get to the next level. But the real aspect of it is you can create people around you virtually or in a book on YouTube or whatever, and just create that atmosphere whenever you want to.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And the biggest word there is create. And I think, if we tap into the fact that we are creators too, right, with a lowercase c, then we can actually um, we can do a lot. And we don't have to sit back and wait. If there's a scenario we don't like or if there's something we want to change, we actually have the capability to create. You can actually kickstart that process, to make something that has its own gravity and will start to, pull around the things around it that you want to see.
I like it. I like it. I like it. So take us back because we got off subject a little bit, but I loved it because I needed to stop you at some of those points because that was good stuff. Take us back to we talked about high school, we talked about college. Now take us through your professional career because I know when we talked in Washington, you were talking about you did basically everything you wanted to do in one career or one field, and now you switched to another one. But take us to like your first taste of being a professional and getting your first job and all that stuff. Take us to that once you graduate from college and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So it kind of started going into my senior year in college. So I actually got an internship program with the Department of Defense. So I actually started working there prior to college, as part of my senior year, finishing, knowing I would complete the program and come into a full-time position. So I started working there. That was my first taste of the professional life. So postgraduate, I went straight through with the DoD, as they call it. There, I did program management work with them for a number of years. So from there, I actually moved into doing my own business. So there with the DoD, that military base I was working at was going to close and move elsewhere to a different state, a couple hours away. So for me, with that transition time, it was also a moment in which I considered transitions as well. What else may I want to do and other things I wanted to get into. And one of them, I was doing art at the time, creative work, graphic design, and also had an
Okay.
entrepreneurial, drive as well. So I said, you know what? Let me hop out and do my own business, right? So that's when I made my own business there and hopped into the graphic design marketing space for a number of years, during which time I transitioned down here.
Okay. So you had your own business that did what? You help businesses get more business.
Yep, helping them get more
You
business, but especially design like logos, branding,
yes.
documentations, graphic design, websites, all of those kind of materials there, or those types of digital products as well.
Okay. So you did all that up north, and you still did that when you transitioned down here.
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Did all that and then came down here in the middle of that, transitioned down here while doing that as well. So I did that for a couple of years while down here. And then while down here, I decided to transition out of that and hop back into the job world to explore some other opportunities. Wasn't quite sure, the space here or the, whole new area, like we mentioned before, different primary industries. As far I came from the defense world before that. And there was no defense world down here. So like that was my professional experience largely outside of my business, and a lot of people didn't really understand that. So I think it was hard to. I know it was difficult for me to sell my value, probably just for what I didn't know. So ultimately, I kind of started over, professional.
Oh,
So I went from being the program manager at the DoD to basically, getting paid minimum wage down here when I hopped into the job world. And I took that as an opportunity with two things. One, okay, I'll go ahead and start from there and let's see where things go. Cause I really want to show if I can stick around in this Charlotte area as well. So I was kind of open to, hey, maybe I head back up north, maybe this, maybe that. But also I had this thing where I'm like, well, what if that doesn't happen? You know, what if you don't go up north? And what if you're here and this is the only place you're going to be? What's your plan now? Right. And that's when I thought, Okay, well then if that's the case, what I'll do is prove to myself that through my diligence and strategy and the application of my principles, I'll go from this minimum wage position and I'm going to climb my way back up, you know. And fortunately it worked out that way. So I kind of looked out and see, okay, what industries are prominent around here. Eventually, realized there were several dominant industries, banking being one of them, which we'll get to in a minute, manufacturing being another, healthcare being another. Couldn't get into banking. I was always told I don't have the experience. Healthcare, same thing. Don't have the experience.
Uh-huh.
But I found an entry level type position in the manufacturing space that most importantly was tied to work I did in Lean Six Sigma and operational excellence back with the deal. Plus, I knew that manufacturing was a hotbed for the type of skill sets I had. So even if I didn't have a role that was specifically centered around it, just let me in the building and I'll go make it happen. Um,
Mhm.
so that's what happened. I got in the building. So at that point,
Just let me in the building
yep,
and I'll make it happen.
put me in the building, and then from there I'll maneuver. And then fortunately things worked out in manufacturing. So I went from one role, a lower role, and got promoted all the way up to vice president of the plant, the operations manager there. So it was a kind of an unprecedented promotion, as someone had told me who had been there for a long time, said that she had never seen anything like that.
Somebody go from the very bottom all the way up to the vice president.
Yeah, yeah, to running the plant
Wow.
basically. Yeah. And I give credit to the leadership there in the plant at the time, who was willing to one be observant for the people around them, right, and then assess the skill sets that people had, and then be willing to put a bet if I put that on me and say, you know what, he may, but I'm not. He's not. I'm not defining him by his role. I'm looking at who he is. I'm looking at what I see his capabilities are. So I give a lot of credit to them for doing that. For doing that. Shout out to Chris, by the way. But you know, and the leadership there at the time. So and that's important too, because sometimes we think, it's what I'm doing. And yes, it is what you do, because you gotta run the routes and put yourself in position to catch the ball. But it's great to have those people, by the way, who pull you up and be like, you know what? Yeah, let's get them. Right. And you need that as well. So fortunately I had that there.
And let me stop you right there because a common theme with everything that you're saying is like atmosphere, community, teamwork, people. Is like you've done a lot of things in your life and you've excelled in a lot of things, but every single step of the way, you're mentioning someone else that sort of helped you get along and to move. So, I mean, it's like like you're doing it, you're doing your part, but it's like God is putting people in your way or in your, how can I say, in your community that helps you go to the next level.
Absolutely. I was talking to my son last night about that, and basically talking to him about putting yourself in position.
Mm.
And once you my modus operandi in a way is like, as long as I live certain principles and I demonstrate and it be an example, things will fall into place. I
Yeah.
think as long as I'm playing my game, which is,
Your game.
yep,
Yeah.
100% playing my game. I'm prioritized. I'm putting my health first, right? I'm starting my day off like that. It's as Jim Rohn said. He's a motivational speaker. He said,
Oh,
"Is
I know Jim.
you know Jim?
Yes.
Okay,
Talk
yeah,
to me. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Is
yeah,
he not a beast?
oh yeah, yeah. He's a beast, man.
Yeah. Love it.
Oh yeah, classic. Those who know, they know Jim Rohn.
Yeah. All this complex stuff, and he just says one thing is like so simple.
Yep, so simple.
Love it. Yeah. But
One
talk about him.
Yeah, one of the things he said, in fact, was he said, it's not about what you get, it's about who you become. So,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and it's like I was telling my son last night, like, it's not even, the person that gets up before the sunrise with a strategic plan to the day is focused on certain objectives. It's not about necessarily what they get, although they're probably going to get something out of that. But it's really about what type of person did that person become who does that.
Yeah.
That's the difference. You don't want to compare, sometimes we compare ourselves like with what our peers have versus what we have. The person
Uh-huh.
who has no structure to their day, I'm just making this up. Somebody who you look at who has no structure to their day, they kind of lollygag, they no real discipline. They seem to have a lot. They have a lot more money than you, prestige, fame, or something like that. But you got to stay focused on the fact that of really what makes things valuable, right? You know, you realize that what are the disciplines that you need to enact on, and that will enable you to establish a strong foundation. And those who are looking, and people are looking, Just like I mentioned, people that help me out and help pull me up and help create a context for me to show my skill sets is that, they're going to see the difference. And they say, with the ears let them hear, those eyes let them see. Those who are discerning, they're going to pick it up. I mean, those who are not, and they make their draft picks. But those who recognize what the skill sets are and the valuable, they're going to pick that up. So it's not about what you get; it's about who you become. And I think that's a very important thing.
Yeah.
How I try to approach it. I just try to put myself in position, do the right things, have the disciplines, and know that okay, this is going to set me on the right track so that regardless of whether I get the approbation of anybody else, I need to look in the mirror and be like, you know what? Well done.
Love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So go back to so professionally now. You're the vice president now, but you're still in manufacturing,
Absolutely. Right now.
right?
Yep. So yep, at this point,
No, I mean not right now, but in our story.
in our story. Yep. Yep. So I'm
In our
still in
story, yes.
manufacturing. Yep. So I'm still in manufacturing. I was there for about about 5 to 6 years or so. About 6 years or so. Before I moved out. But one of the things I started to look at other opportunities was me looking, okay, what's next for me, right? Knowing I was in a comfortable space, as in I was in a good position. There's good demand for what we're doing, a product, a solid place. I work with a great team, you know. But for me, it was a matter of what am I looking to accomplish next, and what am I looking to accomplish here, right? I don't want to just stay in a place of comfort that I'm comfortable with just
So as
because.
soon as you got comfortable, you're like, what's next?
Exactly. What's next?
So so inherently you are seeking being uncomfortable
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
you know that's where the growth is.
Yeah, exactly where the growth is. Where can I go that's going to challenge me more? And one of the things I considered, kind of going back to those industries again, right? It was like, okay,
Hmm.
I'm in manufacturing. All right, what else is around here? The banking industry ended up popping up on my radar. So I'm
Uh-huh.
like, okay, never been in banking, of course, right? Up to this point, I've been denied because I don't have the experience.
Uh-huh.
But I'm seeing an opportunity here, given what's taking place. That's when I started to look in the banking space, and this is one of the top, three banks here in the United States. One of the big things is, I'm looking at people's resume, and I'm like, all right, look, there's some big dogs here. There's some people where
Right.
they got a lot of stripes, a lot of experience. In my space, right? Like, and it's like say operational excellence, Lean Six Sigma. So I'm like, okay, let's play ball. Let's play ball with the big dog. So yeah,
Let me stop right there. So you see all these other resumes and everything. So what's that voice telling you in your head?
yeah, that's a good point there. At that point, I remember just being competitive and ready, you know,
Mm.
because for me, here's where that voice is coming from at this point. I mentioned about starting over, right? Kind of starting over professionally, working from, minimum wage up. I mentioned about starting my own business, right? And doing that. I've got this in my head. So, in between that point, there's lots of different struggles and things I've had to deal with, right? Like even income wise. Like, yeah, I'm making this at one point. Now I'm making that at this point.
Yeah.
My peers are making this. I'm making that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't get this anymore, and I can only get this or that. So like, through I'll say exploit through poverty. Ultimately, I found an
Mm-hmm.
advantage, right? And I'm citing other authors too. Andrew Carnegie has a book called "The Advantage of the Poverty," where he
Mm-hmm.
explicitly talks about that. So through that, I realized that there's a certain type of muscle and endurance I gained at the time, to the point where I'm ready for anybody. And I'm coming out of the manufacturing space. It's more of a tough environment relative to um, let's say,
Banking.
yep, absolutely. Making things,
Okay.
and it's a more physical space. There's dangers to my life and everybody's life every day. Seriously,
Okay.
and there's a lot more to deal with. You know, and quite frankly, I'm looking at the banking side like they're soft, quite frankly. So I'm like, you know what? I'm coming from a different space and background to where, I'm willing to duke it out with anybody here, not undermining their work. I know that
Right.
I'm there now, right? So I can't say, oh, so, but yeah, so I'm like, you know what? Let's bring it on. They're professional. I'm a professional too. And I'm more than happy to go into this space and team and look to provide value here like I provided value elsewhere. Yeah, fortunately it worked out. It was like right towards the end of COVID. So I transitioned at that point, out of manufacturing into banking. and hopped into that space there. But largely driven by really that drive for a new challenge, novelty to put myself to use and test my ability to deliver value in a new context, new team, new space. And it's like, hey, if you're really professional as good as you say you are, then let's prove it. You know, and I think I've done that so far.
Oh, you still have your, at this time, you still were vice president, had your job, but you kept your eyes open for what's next. So then what was the whole process? You just put in a resume, or did you know somebody that got you in there somewhere? Like how did you make that first step to attempt to go into a totally different industry?
Yeah, yeah. It's actually didn't know anybody over there. Actually, it popped up on the opportunity in banking popped up on my radar right before COVID. Right, and I say right before COVID, like when things shut down. So an opportunity popped up. I interviewed for it, and I did not get the role. But I got to like the last stage in the interview, and COVID happened too. So they kind of like closed up roles. Oh, one, I didn't get that job, and then after that, everything shut down. Like nobody's hiring. Everybody's like a freeze on hiring, freeze on spending, etc. But what it did do, it planted the seed in me that if I can get an interview, I can get the job.
All I need to do is just get my foot in the door, and it's mine.
That's it. That's it. Let me in the building and I'll work from there. So like it was I probably interviewed for 3 additional roles after that before I actually got the position I got. And it was fortunate the way things worked out because the last time I got denied for a role, it was actually like kind of serendipitous the way I got denied. So like I applied for the role, got through. They actually didn't accept me for the role, but recommended me for a level up, you know.
For a higher role?
For a higher role, yeah. So it was like, okay, you interviewed for this, but we think you're overqualified for it. Basically, we want you on the team, but we think you're overqualified for that role. So ended up being a situation to where I got referred to another role that was opening up, and it worked out that way. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
Cool. Okay, so now what happened with you getting the job with the bank and then leaving your other job? How did you make that transition?
Yeah, yeah. The biggest thing for me was leaving where I was currently at the time in manufacturing, leaving in good standing. And what I mean by that is like it wasn't something where okay, I put in my 2 weeks and I'm like, yeah, I'll figure it out. You know, didn't do it that way, and that's just not the way I function. So like I really worked up to the last minute. I walked down that hallway and left. It was my goal was to transition this as smoothly as possible and to continue to allow the plant to be successful in whatever way I can influence. So in the meantime, they hadn't had an immediate replacement for me. So I trained up my assistant the best I could, and he was in a solid state. Picked up on things very quickly and very experienced. So I was able to transition things smoothly. So that was my goal there, was just to make sure that everything was finished there. So like while I was there, I wasn't focused. I wasn't focused on banking. Like that's next week. It was literally like that next Monday. I stopped working at manufacturing on Friday, and then like that next week I'd start picked up right in the bank. And I didn't take a break. It was just a weekend. So it was just one of those things where, okay, that's next week's business. Your business now and your responsibility, my business now responsibility is to make sure I finish the job completely as possible so that when I walk away from here, I don't feel like there was something left. And
That's good.
that was my goal. That was my goal with transition, is to just leave it all there, put them in the best position possible to win. And then after that, I'm good to go.
Put them in the best possible position to win. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so now take us to today. Where are you today? Where are you now? What are you doing now professionally?
Yeah. So right now I'm in the banking industry and I am an operational excellence consultant. So let me translate that to English.
Thank
So,
you.
internally, I work with the different groups inside of the bank to make their businesses and processes, pardon me, more efficient, more effective, and also improve their user experience. So with whatever they do and how they execute their work, if they have any problems at all, such as, what, this is taking too much time to do. We don't have enough people to do the job, or we don't know how many people it really takes to do this job, or we need to redesign how we do this. For example, all of those things would bring somebody like myself to consult with them and dig into why that's taking place, analyze why they're in that position, and then recommend solutions to get them out of it.
Wow. So you go around just problem solving and consulting to make sure that me, as an employee of the bank, can do. Well, you basically you're setting me up to win.
Exactly.
You want me to win at whatever I'm doing in the bank. So then you come in and I tell you all my problems, and then you give me suggestions about how I can win better at whatever it is I'm doing.
That's exactly what I
Okay.
do. Yep. So, I'd interview someone, say we're talking right now. I'd interview you and your team to find out what's taking place. What type of problems are you facing? What's the biggest problem in your wheelhouse? What things are challenging for you, things you don't like, and I'll just be taking notes, and find out what those things are. And then eventually, yeah, absolutely. We're going to dive in and we're going to solve that for you. And if it's something that's taking too much time, we'll look to figure out why, and we'll look to trim it down, so that you can get that thing done, that process done quicker, more effectively. And at that point, we're improving your quality of life as an employee, as a person, and
Yeah.
enabling you to be excellent as well as what you're doing.
Yeah, we spend so much time at work and with our work team and actually doing what we've been trained to do. And for you to improve our quality of life at work is priceless. And it's going to, of course, bleed over into our personal life because we're so happy at what we're doing at work.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's one for me, I tell people all the time, the purpose of operational excellence is to enable human excellence. That's the root
Mm,
of what we do. Sometimes we get lost in the fact that we're measuring profitability, right? So we measure our impact in dollars, or we save them, X amount of time, right? Measurable things. But really, to me, all of those measurable things translate to enabling human excellence for the why of what we do. And I think that's one of the things that drives me, that I can have an impact on people, through my analytical skills, my critical analysis skills, critical thinking skills, but leverage that to help people inside of a business. In this case, a very large financial institution, to where I can have impact even more people than I could just, going out here on a one-to-one level.
I talked to someone like a few weeks ago, and she was talking about how she went from this season of life doing this job and position, then to another season. And sort of like you, she was never married to the actual position that she was in. She smoothly um, transitioned from one thing to another thing to another thing. And when I think about you, I mean, you've had success in a bunch of different areas, but it's like you're not really married to like the job or position. It's like you just want to continue to grow. But I would say this though, it seems like in every position that you're in, regardless if you start at the bottom or not, you put yourself in a position where people see that you help other people get better. So do you see like a common theme of that? Like even from high school, do you see like a common theme in your whole life, being that like God has put something inside you that has a need and a desire and a purpose to bring out the best in other people?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think, it all ties together, everything we're talking about, from the health aspect to professional aspect, right? And that is putting myself in a position to where I can make people better, whether that's,
Right.
as an example, or whether that's, through my presence, right? So yeah, that definitely is a continuing theme. And, regardless of where I'm at, it's one of the things to look at. Okay, how can I, bring value to the situation, right? What is not taking place? Okay, they got that covered. They got that covered. All right, maybe nobody's sweeping the floor. That's where I come in. I'm gonna get that broom, and I'm gonna sweep it up. I'm gonna sweep it up reliably. It's gonna be, every day you come in at 5 a.m., that floor is
Mhm.
clean. And I'm gonna be that guy. To where it's like, you know what, he he does the things that we need to help us get better, and fills in the
Yeah.
blanks. So professionally, that's what I've sought to do. And personally as well, just want to put myself in position to be of value to other people. That's why I consider knowledge so important, and learning, and taking care of myself physically as well, so I can be here and be able to function physically, cognitively, and etc.
It's something how there are some people. I often make this little joke about how you go see the doctor, and you're going to see the doctor for health reasons. You need help, but you're waiting on the doctor to come in, and the nurse comes in, and everything, and the doctor is out back taking the smoke break. Then he comes inside and he talks to you and tell you how you need to eat better, you need to exercise, and he's 100 pounds overweight, and he smells like smoke, and you can tell by his eyes he hasn't gotten any sleep. But like with you. was so good about you. And this is really where we want to be as a people. Set an example and focus on yourself so that we can not only hear what you're saying, but we can see what you're saying because you actually live your life based upon what you're actually saying. Because that is the amp of Jesus. He wasn't just talking, he was like living this thing. So, I mean, and I see like in everything you do, yeah, you're working on trying to make other people better, but you're actually making yourself better through the process. So even if we don't even hear a word that you say, we can just look at the way you live your life, and that can be an encouragement to us just to be better.
Yeah, yep. They will be known by their fruits, right? So
Yes.
absolutely. So
Yes.
I think it says a lot. It's funny, I was talking to my daughter the other night, and she was kind of going on some jokes about me being like a health nut, and and all these kind of things. So one of the things I told her though, I said, look, I said, here's part of why I'm doing this, by the way. You know, I said it's so 20 years from now, when you've got kids, you got maybe grandkids or something like that, that I'm still here, and
Yeah.
and I'm still able. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like, she was just being facetious with everything, but I'm like, but this is the reality of why. So when 20 years from now, I'm like that, I am able, because that's my plan. So when 20 years from now I'm able, you're gonna look back and you're gonna look at these things that you were making fun of and be like, it all makes sense. It all makes
It all
sense.
makes sense.
It all makes sense. Like I told you, you're gonna have to hit me with the meteorite to get me out of here, because like it won't be by my own choice, but you gotta hit me with the meteorite. So, because by what's in my control, no.
Mhm.
This is what's going to happen. And that's
I
the way I
like it.
tell them. That's the way I communicate with them and let them know. That's how you should approach it.
I want to stay there for a second because I was talking to some guys because we used to do, my son and I, we used to do a basketball small group. And so I was telling some of the other dads out there, they were younger than I, but I was like, take care of your health as much as you possibly can because you don't know how valuable and special it is for me to be the age that I am and I can still compete with my son. Like I have a son old enough that he can actually play basketball well and I can still run up and down the court and compete with it. I'm not laying down in the middle of the court about to pass out. But talk to me real quick. You said it this whole time, but I want you to reiterate, like, what do you want your personal kids to get out of your experiences with your career, your experience with discipline and grit and everything? What do you want your kids to get out or get from you? So like, for example, if they were to, you know, just be on like a private interview and talk about their dad, what do you know about dad? What do you really want to pass down to your kids?
Be strategic.
Okay.
Yeah,
Talk about it.
yeah.
Talk about it. Yeah.
Because I think what they'll see with me is that he's strategizing, and his strategy informs his tactics.
Mm,
So
okay.
he's not just going about things and just kind of floundering. He's very deliberate.
I like it. Yeah.
I think that's what they'll see, and I think they'll see strength in that,
Hmm.
through that, because they've also seen me a year ago say certain things, and they've seen it come to fruition now. I'll use an example really quick, if you don't mind. You mentioned about competing with your son.
Yeah.
So I've had from basketball and all that kind of stuff. I had like three knee operations on my knee,
Okay.
but that's what took me out of hoops, quite frankly.
Hmm.
So throughout my life, I had this narrative in my head of what I can't do, you know, along with what's going to happen to me if I do. I can't do this. I can't jump. I can't run. I can't play basketball anymore. I can't do any of those things. But if I do, I'm going to get a knee replacement. I'm going to put myself in an operation. I'm going to get hurt. I've had this in my narratives talking to me for years. About a year ago, I got tired of it, and
You got tired of beating yourself up.
got tired of beating myself up. Got tired of being treated like a little wimp by me.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? Whatever's going to happen, all the fears, if the worst fear is some operation, then so be it. I'm gonna run into the operating room, is what I said. And so I'm gonna do what I thought I can't do, which is running, right? So a year ago I started running, and I never forget when I first started running, I was running with my kids. We went to a park nearby, and I started to run, and basically it hurt.
Yeah.
One of the things the way I can describe to people is that I felt like I was disassembling.
Wow. That's big.
Yeah, just because like the fluency for that motion, it just wasn't happening. But I
Mhm.
told my kids at the time, I said, okay, you see where I'm starting. I said, my goal is to be able to run a mile with you all. And that happened. They see right now every day I go to the gym. I told you, I run that treadmill. That's the first thing I do. So
Yeah.
I'm running every day.
So the thing that you were the worst at a year ago is the thing that you start your day with now.
Absolutely. I start my day. And that little voice talks
My
to me.
goodness.
And the first thing I do, as that voice is talking, I run that number up. Yeah, go ahead, keep talking. I'm gonna keep running while you're talking. You're gonna shut up because you ain't got to win to keep up with me today. You know. Um, so yeah, so it's one of those things where, as an
So you're
example.
you're talking back to your voice.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
talking back. I like that, man.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
love it,
Oh yeah,
Dion.
yeah. Well, man, I'm
Yeah.
talking right back to it. It's talking. I'm like, I'm like, all right, be quiet, just shut up. Don't even, like watch, keep talking. I'm gonna keep running.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead and talk while I run. And by the time I get finished talking, I'm already done. Okay. Yep. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's the best. I think that's the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
So your kids you exposed yourself to your kids when you were hurting, you were terrible at something, and you let them know, hey, you see me right now, and you began to speak into your future, like with your kids watching, and now they've seen, hey, Dad was in this place, and he talked himself, he said some certain things, and the things that he said, he brought to pass. So basically, they saw your creativity.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's honestly what they saw.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's exactly why I put it out to them like that. Like, and to
Yeah.
give that point, like, if you strategize and plan, you can get it done. If you're
Mhm.
willing to give it a shot. And so I went from limping and out of breath for point one. My daughter tried to compete with me. It's funny you mentioned DC. It's funny real quick. What happened when we're going to DC? She said, "You know
A
what?
lot of walking.
Yeah, a whole lot of walking, but before that, a whole lot of talking." So,
Oh.
so my daughter was like, all of a sudden wanted to compete with me in running because I beat her in a prior scenario. Uh,
Mhm.
so she was like, all right, once we get to DC, we're gonna run, see who gets a mile first, right? I'm like, okay, yeah. So then eventually she said, no, we're gonna do it right when you get out of the car because I drove. You know what I mean?
Huh?
Because
Oh yeah, right.
this way you're all stiff and all that kind of stuff. And I want to compete with you like that. I said, fair game.
Supposed to have an advantage, huh?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep. Right when I got out of the car, we went to that treadmill. I found a treadmill and yeah, straight out of a 6, 7 hour road trip. Put the shorts on, went straight to the gym, and ran that mile right in front of their eyes. And to your point, they saw me a year ago, and now they see me come out of a car in the stiffest situation possible, and go ahead and make it happen still. And it's all big examples, like you said. We can talk to a blue in the face, but like you got to be an example, and that's what makes people believe it.
That's what make people believers. Yes, because they see the miracles. I
Mhm.
love it.
Oh yeah.
There's something that we were talking about with the kids in Washington. I want to say this is something from Jim Owen. I want to say he said something to the effect of people spend more time planning their vacations than they do their own lives. And with you talking about strategy and everything, it makes me think that you're setting your kids up to actually think about like what they want and how do you want to live and what do you want to do. And then once you find that out, then let's reverse engineer that to see, what steps you need to take in order to get there. And that's something that grown people still don't know. We're still taking like 5 and 6 and 7 hours planning a week-long vacation. But when's the last time we sat down and planned the next week of our lives? And like you talked about from the beginning, you know what you're going to do the next day when you go to sleep. You're not waking up and saying, is this a gym day or not? No, you already know it's a gym day. I'm getting on the treadmill. And so, like all those voices in your head, they can say whatever they want to say, but you already have your intention set. And I like the fact that you're talking about with your kids, you want them to have their intention set because those voices are going to come. But now the voices have they have a wall to hit against. Because if there's no intention, then those voices must be the truth.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you have an intention, then you have something to fight with. And you have something to fight with because you know who you are and what you're all about.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it makes things a lot easier when you come into today.
A lot easier, yeah.
When you knew last night why you're getting up this morning. When that alarm goes, it's a lot easier to crawl out of bed. When that alarm goes off, and if you don't know what you're gonna do, snooze, or you know what I mean, and turn that off. You know what I mean. But if you come up and it's like, you know what, I know exactly what I need to do right now. The decision's already made. Like you said, that voice, it's gonna hit that wall. It's gonna find another way
Yes.
to try to get to you. Like I said, while you're walking in the gym, like I'm walking in the treadmill, then it's gonna try to get to me. So it's a little cold out. It's a little this, it's a little that. But absolutely, yeah. That voice is silence when it sees that plan and that focus, it's got a hard time breaking that barrier.
I've had a great time with you. It's something how, we've met a few times before and everything. And, we talked and I felt like we were on the same page with a lot of things, but you really don't know until you sit down and have a real conversation with somebody. So I do thank you for having this conversation with me. And I have a lot of big takeaways, but one of the big things, and I keep on coming back to this, you are like a living example of a believer, a man of God, a professional, and someone that not only your kids can look up to, but like other kids can look up to. But also, even going beyond that, you're just the type of person that we can look up to. And you said it before. You said, like, going back with Jim Rohn, who are you becoming? Yeah, you're doing all this stuff. Yeah, you're working on going to the gym, but that's the surface thing. Like, who are you becoming on the inside of you? And in my opinion, after having this conversation, because I didn't know all this stuff about you, but after having this conversation, I can see where it's like you you are the person that we can look up to, but it's like you're still becoming. It's like you're still not comfortable, like in where you are. You're gonna you're gonna consistently find something else like, hey, I wasn't able to do this, and then you're gonna go and do that. And that's priceless. And I feel like that is the value of actually living. I know someone said one time that you wake up and do the same thing over and over and over again, and you call that living. No, living is when you go from challenge to challenge to challenge, and you continue to grow like for the rest of your life. And as for you, I see you growing for the rest of your life just because of the way that you set your life up. So, you have to go now because I know you have to start your day. But what's any final type of comments you want to give to homeschool parents, to dads, to kids, to anybody? Just give us
Yeah, yeah. I would say, live your life with intention. Don't
intention.
let
Yes.
things just pass by and just be whichever way the wind blows. Live your life with
Mm.
intention. And I think if you set a solid intention, which is coupled with works as well,
Yes.
then the rest that will make that happen, you'll make that happen. But be intentional about what you do. And if you approach life and like that, good things will happen.
Good things happen.
Yeah.
Now, lastly, is there any way that we can get in touch with you? Is there anything that you have going on that would be valuable to families or homeschool kids or just anybody? Is there any way that we can get in touch with you to find out what you're doing and what you're all about, like off of this right here?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I'm on a LinkedIn platform. Feel free to look me up, Dion Baker,
Okay.
Dion Baker. But also have a platform I created called OpX Future. That's OPEX Future .com. You can go there as well. And basically, right there, I teach in the OpX space. So I share informational products around my profession. In the process of creating a couple courses as well on operational excellence and the integration of that and artificial intelligence. So a lot of work to come. Yeah, check for me on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect and take it from there.
So I'll put your LinkedIn link and everything in the show notes and all that stuff. But Dion, I appreciate it, man.
Oh yeah,
Man, you're an all-star. I know you had knee surgeries and everything, but you're an all-star, man. I love it.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Hey, once we're in the game, I'm in this game for life. We're going for the win, so we're gonna get it.
We're going for the win.
That's right. Yeah.
All right, my man. You be blessed, and I'll talk to you soon.
Hey, you too. Appreciate the time, man. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
You bet.
Bye.
Thank you for staying to the very end and listening to this entire podcast. I really do appreciate it. And I want you to do me a couple favors. One favor is I want you to leave something in the comments. If there's someone or some industry that you would like for me to interview that would help progress or support you in your homeschooling journey. Also, I want you to subscribe and share this podcast with some of your friends or family that are raising kids and are in the homeschool community. So once again, thank you so much for joining us. This is Lynn Pierre with Homeschool Aficionado. I'll see you next time.